Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Justice League Revisited, the best companion podcast for watching Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, according to three guys in my office. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening. You hear her infectious laughter on the other side of the Zoom screen. My wonderful co-host, the voice of Wonder Woman, Susan Eisenberg. Hello to you.
So we have three fans out there?
Well, four, because my mom listens, remember?
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. All right. Awesome.
How are you?
I would do this without anyone listening because I so enjoy it, but I'm well and I'm happy to be here today and I'm happy to have our guest today and I'm happy to be revisiting this episode because it's one of my favorites.
I'm excited. Since we did Justice League, I kept always looking ahead because Justice League Unlimited, such a great show. So many great stories they were told, and I kept looking ahead. I'm like, we can get this guy on, or we'll reach out to Gail Simone. We can have all these different people. I was so excited.
Of course.
So for those of you who are listening, we are covering the second episode in season 1, which debuted on August 7th, 2004, 21 years ago. For The Man Who Has Everything, which was adapted from a fantastic story, Superman Annual 11. I was thinking about going to my mom's house and getting it to hold the issue up, but we don't use the video on this, so no one would care. Originally written by Alan Moore with art by Dave Gibbons. This is a story that was adapted by our guest, who is with us now, J.M. DeMatteis, who adapted this fantastic story. Thank you very much for joining us.
I am happy to be here. 21 years ago. Holy
I know. I think you ought to. I heard you gasp. When...
Time, as not a week goes by that I don't think of this Bob Dylan line where he says, time is a jet plane. It moves too fast. It's one of the songs on Blood on the Tracks. And it always, to use an old fashioned phrase, it always blows my mind. It's just the passage of time. And then COVID created this black hole that sucked like 5 years into it that I don't understand. I think 2018 or 2019 was like 5 minutes ago, and it's not, let alone 21 years ago.
Well, I always say we are currently in the 68th month of 2020 right now. So that's how time has worked out.
That's a great way to put it.
But this is obviously not your first go-around with writing for TV. You and I talked about when I had you on my show about adapting the Twilight Zone. Right. Working on the Twilight Zone was, I think, your first TV script. Am I correct? Right.
Well, let's be clear to people. We're not the 1960s.
No.
1980s Twilight Zone.
That is correct.
Time is passing, but not quite that quickly.
Do you have a preference? When you're writing prose versus comics versus teleplays versus stories for TV? Do you have a preference?
Graphic novels?
Yeah.
Graphic novels. Eesh.
In the end result, story is story. Mm-hmm. The difference is the format, and with anything else, when you're entering a new arena, you have to learn that format. And in the beginning, when I started in comics, it was the same thing. There's a really specific format, and for the first few months, all you're thinking about is the format and how you can squeeze your story into that format, and then it moves from your head to your intuitive center, and you don't think about it anymore. Same with TV, you have to learn that format. If there's a real difference between the two, and we'll certainly get into it talking about Justice League Unlimited, is that when I'm writing prose, and maybe I'll get to plug my novellas while we're talking.
Please do.
Or when I'm writing comics as well, even on these iconic characters, there's a lot of room for a writer to have a very specific personal vision, especially if you're doing creator-owned comics. Forget it. It's you and the artist, and that's it. When you're working in TV, especially the difference between me and probably most of the people that you've talked to on the show is I'm a freelancer. Most of those guys work on the show. They're producers, they're story editors, they're directors. I'm just a freelancer sitting here most of the time 3,000 miles away from where they are. So I'm being hired in a very different way. So I'm being hired on a show that has a vision for an entire season, that has stories mapped out that they want to do. And I'm hired to come in, and I'm usually given a specific story that they want to tell that I then have to bring my stuff to and flesh out for them. But I'm not going, and here's my personal vision for how Justice League Unlimited is going to be. That's not the way it works. My job, and it's a tricky balance, is to give them what they want, but bring as much of myself to the process that I'm bringing something unique to it also.
Which begs the question, how did you get the job?
Well, I worked with Stan Berkowitz on the live-action Superboy TV show, a show that most people don't even know ever existed. It was on for like 5 years.
I loved it.
I worked on the last season with Stan, and wrote 5 episodes, did a brief stint on staff, and that's how Stan and I got to know each other. I love Stan. He is just a great guy, and a great talent. And I could talk about Stan forever, but he's a great guy. And so it's a funny thing how things work, how things go around and come around. So I was approached, this must be in the early 90s, about working on what was then the current Spider-Man animated series, and by Marty Pasco, who was a comic book writer. And I said to Marty, "Oh, you have to meet Stan Superboy had wrapped up, and I said, you have to meet Stan Berkowitz. I mean, he should be writing for you. He's fantastic." But somewhere along the line, Marty left the show. John Semper came in. They ended up hiring Stan, and that's what kind of launched Stan on his animation career. Wow. So then, some years go by, and Stan approaches me about writing for Justice League Unlimited. I had done a little bit of animation. I'd written an episode of the animated Ghostbusters in like the late 80s or mid 80s, but it wasn't something that was on my bucket list, working in animation at all. I wasn't that interested in it, but I'm always interested in a fun new gig. And it was Stan, and it was Justice League, and I had a history with Justice League and comics. So I said yes, little knowing that would start a whole new career path for me that continues to this moment. You never know how things. Susan, I listened to your interview when you were on my daughter's podcast. So much of what you said about your freelance life as a voice actor is exactly what it is as a writer. I mean, you just never know when the door is going to slam, what unexpected door opens that leads you on a whole new path. And that's what happened with this episode of Justice League. It literally gave me a whole new career.
Wow.
So you get the call to do this. And how does this episode come about? Because obviously it existed and you adapted it. So how did that all go? How did that go down?
Happily for me, I had never read the story. Because if I had read it before, if I had known its reputation, I probably would have been terrified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, they said, we're going to do this. They send me a copy of the comic. I read it. Oh, that's a really cool story. So, and basically it's a simple process. You write the outline, you send it in, they change your outline around, they send it back. You know how it goes.
Right. Uh-huh.
And this story, this is very funny because I really thought, wow, this is going to be how it's going to be for my whole career here. So I do the first draft. We get the outline all worked out. Between all of us, it's a very nice adaptation of the story. And I do the first draft of the script, and I send it off, to Stan and company, and I don't hear anything back. And time goes by, and I don't hear anything back. And the freelance mind sitting alone in your office is like, oh, dear God, I completely screwed this up. They think I'm awful. I'm never going to get any work out of these guys again, blah, 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 on and on and on. So I finally got in touch with Stan, and I said, Stan, I never heard anything back. Like, what's wrong? Oh, nothing's wrong. It was perfect. We don't need any rewrites. And off we go. So I'm thinking, wow, is this the way it's going to be? From just turning a draft. By the next episode that I did for them, I did all the rewrites, everything. It's such a rare thing that one turns in a script. That maybe happened to me one other time, and they go, this is just great the way it is. There's no notes, because there's always notes and notes
always.
And notes, So it was just, I thought I'd completely failed, but apparently I had done a very good job. So that opened the door on the show for me, which, as I said, in turn opened up a whole career in animation for me.
So you do this episode, and when's the last time you saw it? Because I'm assuming you watched it for this interview.
Oh,
or maybe not.
I'll tell you that I did, but I didn't. But I remember it well. It's okay.
Okay, because I watched it yesterday.
Okay.
In preparation for this. And I know this episode really well because it's one of my favorites. And it's just the Trinity. It just, there's something so sweet about it. And the dynamic of the three of us, I just absolutely adore.
Right.
I was going to ask you, looking back on it, because I just had such joy on my when I was watching it. It holds up so well. It's just such a great episode. Standalone.
I think that's, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's I'm so used to Justice League where everything was a 3-parter or a 2-parter.
Oh, right.
And there it is. It was just this lovely 22-minute story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, it helps when you have great source material. And, I think that's that's that whole show. I mean, I think as the years have passed, people have realized, I didn't realize it was a gig. It was a fun gig. I enjoyed it, working on the show. I enjoyed the people that I worked with. I worked mostly with Stan and Dwayne McDuffie. Those were my contacts. But as time has passed, you look back, and a couple of years ago, I rewatched the whole series. On the I'm always looking for something to watch on the treadmill, so I rewatched the whole thing. It's like, oh my God, what they could put into, and I say they because I still feel like I'm on the outside looking in, even though I did 7 episodes.
Right.
What they got into 22 minutes. The plot, the characterization, the emotion, the humor. There's so much going on in that show. It's as someone who's worked in comics for 40 years and written tons of Justice League, I think it's one of the very, very best versions of the Justice League that's ever been done.
Yeah, we get that all the time. So many people come up to Susan or Phil or Marie at conventions and tell them that they're the definitive voice of this character because of this show. I to your point, Susan, too, this was such an emotionally driven, like my heart broke for Superman, and George's performance, my God, was just absolutely incredible. I know, JM, you're an East Coast guy, and this was a gig. Did you ever go out to Warner Brothers Studios for any of these things to be on hand when they were recording any of the episodes?
Not for Justice League. When I was working on Brave and the Bold, I did.
Okay.
But not for Justice League. Yeah, but that's what you hope for. You want a story. I mean, that's, on my worst day, I think I can deliver emotion in a story. The rest of the story may be awful, but there's always some emotion going on in there. And this story, it's all built in. I mean, Kal-El and his son, that whole thing, I mean, it's just, it's heart-wrenching. So there's a great emotional core. The concept behind it is great, that he's living out this life that he always wanted. It's sort of a little bit of Superman's It's a Wonderful Life in a twisted way, There's so many great, and then, you have great elements for Batman and Wonder Woman. It just works.
I love the beginning. I love the beginning when that, taking the curve too hard, in the plane when she and, Batman are alone in the plane, and then they arrive, and that banter between them about, oh, Bruce, you didn't get him a gift card. And, it's so, I mean, I think the show endures because we know these characters so well.
Yes.
Because you can have those exchanges. I mean, the plots are wonderful and the action is incredible, but those moments of just real conversation between these characters, and it's throughout, it's all the characters. It's not just, me and Batman and Superman, it's all of us. And I think that's primarily why it endures, because of the heart.
Yeah. But that's the hook of any great show, isn't it? Once you're invested in the characters, you will go on the ride, no matter what. Well, this week's episode wasn't as great as last week's, but I love those characters. I'm going to be back next week.
100%.
And that's what you hope for. You hope that people have to connect emotionally. People have to connect psychologically. It has to, you're dealing with these larger than life characters, but they have to have a psychological and emotional reality to them, or it's not going to work.
So I have a question. Why wasn't it called Heart's Desire, the episode?
Alan Moore's story was called For the Man Who Has Everything. That's
I know, but I just kept thinking, because you keep talking about Heart's Desire. I'm like, first of all, it sounds like a romance novel. But secondly, it really sounds like the perfect title for a show, because they talk about it. It's almost like an homage to something else, Heart's Desire.
Right.
I wrote it down finally, because I'm like, how many times are they going to mention it?
That's funny. That's very funny. Yeah. I think the comic book fans would have been very upset.
Oh, absolutely.
Of this classic Alan Moore story that I didn't know was classic had been changed,
Right. No, absolutely. No, and I'm not suggesting it should have been changed, but it just struck me as I was watching it, like how many times they mention it.
And
it's a great trope, this idea, and it's been in literature, and movies from the dawn of time, but Alan Moore did it in such a beautiful way. The what if my life had been this, what if my life had been that, parallel universes, or just in our imagination or in our hearts. It's an idea that never fails if you do it right, because we all have that. We all think about those moments in our life that branch off and what if, and this story really delivers that.
And we got to see that with Carl. He did when Dr. Destiny came in. We got to see Martian Manhunter. You know, him thinking that his planet survived. He was there with his wife and 2 kids, and there's always that very human element to these very alien characters that are larger than life, like Superman and Martian Manhunter. And I'm curious, was there? You said this was the first draft. You sent it in, boom, done, no revisions needed. I wonder what Wonder Woman's heart desire would have been had the Black Mercy taken hold of her.
Well, that's an interesting question.
And I was a little surprised it wasn't that. You know, it was interesting to me. It was like, wait, is there a part 2? Like,
well, you know, it's a great sequel idea. It really is, you know.
Because it just stopped without hers. And I thought, that's interesting. Was it a time constraint? Was it because you have the 2 characters and it's so brilliant with the 2 of them. And it was obvious with the 2 of them too. Like with Batman, as soon as the scene started with him and his parents walking, you knew that it was what would Wonder Woman have been? You know, it's not as obvious.
As someone who inhabited that character so fully, what do you think?
Well, she'd still be on Themyscira. And, you know, I don't think she ever would have been beckoned out of that world. But that's not necessarily her heart's desire.
World, right. Having lived in that world, she's someone, I mean, she's kind of lived out in a weird way what Superman already has, because she's had 2 lives.
Yes.
You know, she's had that life with the Amazons and then life, you know, in this world. So is her heart's desire some fusion? I don't know how you would make a fusion of the 2, you know?
No, that's a great point. And did it ever come up to do her?
No.
It's interesting because I was very aware of it. And I was also aware of her with the gun. It seemed like when she takes that huge, do you remember this
the
scene
fusion
where
cannon?
Yeah.
Yes. It just, she seemed especially violent in this episode.
Well, she's a warrior. I mean, that is her thing.
Yeah, but she's like, I'm used to a lasso.
Right. I think also this particular villain was so powerful, I think.
Yeah.
And Superman's life was on the line. So they're desperate, you know?
Yes.
This is their friend and they're going to lose him. Plus they're dealing with this massive force. So, and I don't remember, but was that in the comic book, I wonder. It's
been a while since I've read it. There were obviously changes because Jason Robin was in the comic book version too.
Right,
he was
right. But
out,
if you got 22 minutes, how are you going to fit all these people in? Especially with a story that has such a straight emotional line through it, you can't keep lumping in too many people in a story like that.
And in the comics, if I remember correctly, it was Jason Todd. So would we have had, because we never got Jason in the Timber, so I don't know if it would have been Tim Drake or if it would have been Dick Grayson. Would have been an interesting choice to see.
Right. I don't think Robin ever showed up in JLU, did he? No, I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware of, no. The JLU made crossovers into Batman, but never the other way around, I don't think.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm going to branch off a little bit.
Sure.
But because I'm in thinking about the show, a couple of years ago, James Tucker and I got to do a comic book miniseries that was essentially the next season.
Yes, you did.
And we had so much fun with that. And James has even said this. He said, God, this would make a great animated movie, or if we revived the show, it'd be a great multi-part story. And I keep secretly hoping, not that secretly because I'm talking about it, that somebody decides to do that. Because I think, it really, really worked out. I knew James because I worked with him on a bunch of projects, but I really got to know him working more intimately on this series as co-writers, He's such a great guy, but I've been really lucky. All these guys that I've worked with at Warner Brothers Animation have been really good people. And I always say, it's not like sometimes you're dealing with TV stuff and you're dealing with executives who aren't writers. Everybody I deal with is a creative person, is a writer, Alan Burnett, Bruce Timm, Jim Krieg, all these people are writers, Dwayne McDuffie. So for me, I always say I spend most of my time alone in a room playing with my imaginary friends, So to get on the phone with these guys and spend an hour or sometimes 2 hours just talking about story, it's a great thing, It's a really, really great thing. It's so much fun. So I enjoy taking off that personal vision hat and putting on that team player hat and working with people like this. And then, the other thing is you send these stories out into the world, and the average audience for an episode of Justice League Unlimited is so far in excess of the average audience of the average comic book. So you're reaching so many more people as well, especially in today's market. My God, yeah.
Well, and I think Stan and Dan Reba, they've started to go to Comic-Cons because there's such an audience for them and for you.
Yeah.
As you know, we were appearing in Pasadena, and Dan came. The cast was appearing at a Comic-Con, and Dan came to say hello, and we were like, Dan, join us on the stage for our panel. And he's like, oh, no one's going to want to hear. And he joined us on the stage. James can attest to this. And he was the biggest hit of the panel. I mean, there were so many questions for him. And as we were leaving the room, he was swamped by people wanting to ask further questions. And, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast was because we wanted to put a huge spotlight on the writers, because without them, we wouldn't be here talking about the show. It was really those scripts. And it's been wonderful.
Because you had these really talented people on staff that were great writers. And I'm not trying to be humble. I mean, I'll take credit for what I did, but these guys were great. You know what I mean? They really had a vision for this show.
Yes.
And it was a fantastic, fantastic vision. Going to what you said, I learned, some years ago, I was at a convention promoting one of the DC animated movies that I wrote. And I realized, as I'm sitting there signing posters or whatever I was doing, this is a whole different audience. Mm-hmm. These aren't necessarily there is a crossover between the comic book fans and the animation fans, but there's a whole group that just know these characters through these shows and through these animated movies. And, same thing, I guess, with the live action movies. And it was a revelation to me, because I always thought it was just the same bunch of people, but it wasn't. They didn't know me necessarily from my years and years of comic book work. They knew me because I wrote this movie or that TV show. It's fascinating.
You just did a big con, if I'm not mistaken, in Brazil. It's your first time you've done a con for a while. How'd it go?
How did it go was that I didn't get to go because I got sick and had to cancel.
No.
Yeah. So they're inviting me back for this year. We're trying to figure out if we can make it for this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Last convention I went to was in 2019. And then how I knew that COVID was a serious thing, I had written a DC animated movie of Superman Red Sun. We had a whole premiere planned in Manhattan. Everything was all set, and all of a sudden that got canceled. And that was when I got the first inkling of, oh my God, there's something going on here, Mm-hmm. So I have not been to a convention since 2019. I am going to be I can't say it. Never mind. Hasn't been announced yet.
Just ignore that part.
So
Just ignore that part.
I don't. Yeah, we'll cut that part out. I'll tell you later.
Okay. I'm going to just quickly check, because we put out on Twitter whenever we're going to have a fantastic guest like you on, and I always try to solicit some questions. I'm just seeing we have our friend at Shara Holes, Holz, wants to know your favorite part about bringing this particular comic to the screen. What was the best part in your mind of doing this, adapting this?
The wonderful thing about what I do for a living is the 10-year-old in my soul is very well fed. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do.
So an episode like this, it's Superman, it's Batman, it's Wonder Woman. There's a 10-year-old inside me going, oh my God, what am I? You know what I mean? And it's like later on when I did the episode, I think was it called Clash with Superman versus Captain Marvel? And same thing. It's like, oh my God, it's Superman and Captain Marvel. So you have to keep that voice alive in you, or else you shouldn't be doing this stuff.
Right.
And so if anything, when I think about an episode like this, it's just the fact, and I'm still amazed to this day. I'm working on Spider-Man. I'm writing a Batman story. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I wrote for the new Cape Crusader show. It's like, and there's always the minute that 10-year-old shuts up and isn't excited about me doing this is the day I have to pack it in. But there's a part of me that is always thrilled and delighted that I get a chance to work with these characters, even after all these years of doing it. And that's the joy of it. That's really the joy of it.
And we've kind of already addressed this one. Our friend at Twitter handle, there it is, Steely Dill. He wanted to know, was there any consideration for including Robin? But it sounds like the notes came out that, hey, we're not doing Robin because
just focus on the big three there.
Yeah.
I think it really needed to be streamlined for the emotional clarity of the story, I think.
Sure. And at Girl with Cello found this episode to be incredibly moving. I loved to hear how you developed each character's fantasy. And then we already asked this too. What would Wonder Woman's have been if the creature had attached? Was there much need to develop? Because obviously this was adapted from the comic story. Now we saw an extended version of Batman's in the comic story, actually.
Right. No, it was all there. It was all there. Adaptation is an interesting thing because a lot of these animated movies that I've done have been based on comic book stories. Now this is 22 minutes. It's tight. So really, what it's really about is winnowing things down to the heart and the soul and the essence of the story. But like with these animated movies, it becomes using the story as a foundation, and then building something on top of that. Something new, because if your adaptation is exactly the same as the source material, then read the source material. What's the fun, Like I did a Constantine animated movie that really one of the best things I think I've ever worked on, and it's based on a graphic novel called All His Engines, which had great material in it, but we built a lot of other really interesting stuff on top of that and brought in new characters and new plots and all these different things. And I think that to me is that you want to be true to the essence of the story. You don't have to be true to every detail of the story. I think an adaptation fails if you violate the essence, not if you're changing elements around, because it's a different medium too. Doing a 90-minute animated movie or a 22-minute animated TV show is not the same as a comic book. It's just not. The language is different. The way you can fit elements in is different. The way you're communicating with the audience is different. So adaptation.
That's a great point, though. That's a great point about the essence. I think that's so valid.
Yeah.
If you lose that, you've lost the ball game. But if that's what you have to keep in mind is the essence.
And I think when we go to see movies of our favorite books and they don't capture that essence, that's when it fails. I remember years ago they made a movie out of The World According to Garp. And I loved that book, John Irving. And they changed a lot. But I remember thinking they really got this book. They got the heart and soul of this book. So I didn't care what they changed because they communicated the essence of that story to me and did really interesting things with it. I don't know why that one popped into my head, but it did.
We have at The Real Shuban just wanted to say that this episode, along with Epilogue, two favorite episodes for him. So we appreciate that very much. With working on all the different ones you've worked on for Justice League, and then you mentioned Brave and the Bold. Do you feel like they're very different styles of animation, very different tones? Obviously, Brave and the Bold was very over the top and comical. Do you find that your particular type of writing, do you feel more comfortable in either a little bit more grounded or a little bit more fun and playful, like the Brave and the Bold?
Well, I did 5 years of Justice League and more with Keith Giffen, which was very humor-based.
Yes.
It was basically a superhero sitcom. The fun is, even if it's something that I'm not comfortable with, if I get presented with it, it's a challenge. So I'm willing to try it, And Brave and the Bold, the interesting thing about Brave and the Bold, it was lighter. It was very, very looking at the sensibility of the 66 Batman TV show, because James Tucker loves that, But a lot of the episodes that they gave me were like their darkest episodes. They gave me the Doom Patrol episode where the Doom Patrol dies at the end. They gave me this Red Tornado episode where he creates an android son and has to essentially mercy kill him at the end of the story, traumatizing millions of 6-year-olds across America, So there were light episodes, but they were able to kind of turn into the dark as well on that show. But any great story ultimately, you want to balance. You read Dickens, you even read Dostoevsky. There's funny stuff in Dostoevsky, you know what I mean? And so there's always room, because life is like that. Life could be, sometimes it's the funniest at the most deadly serious moments, because we need that to get through the most deadly serious moments. So hopefully you get a balance.
No, and for the record, you and I have talked before. I love your run on Justice League America with Keith was just still my favorite. When I sold my comic book collection, I kept maybe 3 runs. That Justice League run was the one I'm like, I can't part with this. It's so good. And it still holds up. Like, I'll have my niece has started reading some of my comic books and she goes, this is really funny stuff. I said, yes, it is. So I'm allowing her to keep reading. Otherwise I just would have shut her off.
Certain things, it's really funny because that series has had a life that's just gone on and on and on. And I run, when I would go to conventions, people, I just read this for the first time last week, something that I did from like 1987 to 1992 or whatever it was, and especially then, you never thought this stuff would live on. Now we're used to comics being collected in these fancy hardcover editions and all these things.
Right.
Then it's just a gig. You do the best you can with the story, you move on to the next story. So when you come back 30 or 35 years later and people are still reading and discovering the work and appreciating it, it's a great thing. And I've forgotten these stories. So every once in a while I might pull one out and look at it and I laugh. And I figure if I'm laughing, it must be funny. But again, the great thing about that series was it wasn't like wacky humor. It was all character based. The characters were real people who just happened to have senses of humor, which made it funny. I always related it to, being in my late teens, early 20s, hanging out with my friends in Brooklyn on a Saturday night where everybody's always, going at each other humorously, but seriously at the same time. And it's more real. We went over the top a few times on Justice League with some goofy stuff, but mostly it was just character-based humor. And I think that's why it connected with people, because sometimes that, especially in comics where everything is so, breast-beating, angsty stuff, mm-hmm. The humor and those characters seem in a lot of ways more real and more connected to reality as we know it than the really brooding melodramatic stuff.
I've got to ask you, because my fan casting would have been, for a perfect Blue Beetle Booster Gold, would have been obviously Alan Tudyk and Nathan Fillion as those characters. But we're seeing Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner in James Gunn's new Superman movie. Your thoughts on that casting?
I love Nathan Fillion. I've seen the images of him, and it's fantastic. I love it. Everything I'm seeing, I've really been burned out on a lot of these superhero movies and TV shows in recent years. But the Superman trailer, same thing. Here comes the 10-year-old inside my soul going, mm-hmm. Superman, you know what I mean? And it something about it is really, and the Fantastic Four trailer that I've seen has had the same impact on me. So I'm actually looking forward to both of those movies in a way I haven't looked forward to any of these movies in quite a while. And
I always said, if they let the Justice League, the people who did our show, do any of the live action, it would have been one of the most successful mm-hmm. franchises in history.
I've been saying that for years.
It's just,
why don't you let those guys make these movies?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't run the studio.
Right. And I certainly don't. Although I have to say, I got to do a little Zoom call with James Gunn last year, and he seems like, this is a guy who really loves and respects the source material, understands it. He's a fan. Mm-hmm. So I have great faith in him. I think this, not just this movie, but I think everything that he's going to be doing going forward. And then he also took Creature Commandos, which is this silly, obscure thing I did when I'd been in the business for 5 minutes, and turned it into this, TV show. And now all of a sudden it's a big deal.
So good.
So it's okay with me.
Yeah, now everyone wants a GI robot figure now.
Right. And Maxwell Lord's going to be in the Superman movie. So, it's a good thing. Talking
about your other work, between the Kickstarter you've done very successfully for the DeMatteis verse, the DeMultiverse, your other stuff you're working on. I know you're working on a couple other projects. Talk a little bit about some of the other stuff you're doing right now.
The things that I'm doing right now, I can't tell you.
Okay. Oh. That's our time, folks.
We are sending the DeMultiverse books. They're going off to the printer. We did round 2. For people that don't know, what we did with the DeMultiverse was we did a Kickstarter where I launched 4 new, in collaboration with my friend David Baldy, who became the publisher. We launched 4 new number ones, 4 new series that I created with 4 incredible artists, different genres, different tones, different styles. We did the first round. Then some months back, we did the second round for the second issues. So that's all heading out to the printer now. And depending on the economy and how much printing will cost in the future and things like that, we hope there will be the 3rd round and the 4th round and the 5th round. But it was one of the most fun projects that I've ever worked on, because when do you get to launch 4 new things at once, with incredible collaborators. And we even slipped in a 5th bonus book along the way. So that was great. But what I'm working on now, I just finished a new novella that I turned in to my publisher, which is a company called Neotext that did my previous novellas. I'm working on 2 different comic book projects right now that haven't been announced, so I can't talk about them. And I'm working on some animation stuff right now that hasn't been announced, so I can't talk about that either. So let me plug the 2 novellas that came out already.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good.
They're supernatural thrillers. I hadn't done prose in about 10 years, and the first one is called The Excavator, which was my first step back into prose, and I just loved it. Because we talk about, the differences. With prose, there are no guardrails. There's no editor. I mean, there was an editor at the end, but, it's just you. You're on your own, and it's very freeing and very daunting. And I hadn't used those muscles in a while. So the first one was like getting back into the gym to get those muscles working, and turned out really, really well. I'll give you the premise because it's one of the few times when I actually had a good hook that I could say very quickly. Most of my stories don't have good hooks that I can explain briefly. So this woman wakes up one morning, she's in bed and she sees this child standing at the end of her bed that she's never seen before in her life. At first she thinks she's dreaming, but she's not. She realizes there's a kid in her bedroom. Her husband's sleeping next to her. And the kid starts to crawl into the bed. And she freaks out and she grabs the kid and she throws him on the floor. And the kid starts to cry and the husband wakes up. And the kid says to the husband, "Daddy, why did mommy do that?" This is her child, who she has absolutely no memory of. Her memory of her child has been erased. She remembers her husband. She remembers her daughter. She remembers everything about her life. But this child has been completely erased. And then she gets a text message saying, basically, pay the ransom or we're going to take the memories of your daughter next. And that's the premise of the story. And that's just where it jumps off from. So that was a fun one.
James, did you leave to go get it? Hello?
Yeah,
James,
it's on my Amazon wish list.
It's called The Excavator. It also has 10 beautiful illustrations by a Greek artist named Vasilis Gatzilis. And the second one is called The Witness, about a short version, a man who witnesses a plane crash and believes that the spirits of the 215 people that died in this crash are somehow within him now and want something from him. Mm-hmm. So, and that has 10 beautiful illustrations by J.H. Williams III, who's an amazing artist. And the new one got longer, so I think it may have crossed over the line from novella into novel. So, but I can't talk about it yet. So there we have it.
So basically, you're a very busy man.
I'm always happier when I'm busy. People say, "You're ever going to retire?" No, and I went through a period years ago. This must be in the early 2000s, where I don't remember. Stuff was going on in my life, and I thought about, do I want to do this? And in order to really wrestle, and that, as a creative person, you're so identified with what you do that it's hard to separate the two. I am a writer, mm-hmm. And I had to really work to separate myself from my writer self and kind of surrender my writer self to the universe and say, okay, should I keep doing this? I don't know. And what the universe said back to me in very plain language was, "Schmuck, you're a writer." Mm-hmm. I would be, if no one was paying me, I'd be making up stories. It's just what I do. It's just the way my mind works. I'm a creative person. I've been a musician, a songwriter, and I like to tell stories. And I will be telling stories until I can't tell that. And if people stop buying them, I'll still be making up stories. So I'm very, very happy that people are still paying me to do this. Well, I don't take it for granted.
No, I'm sure you don't.
Because I was always a creative kid, and I always knew. I remember being 14 years old on the phone with a friend and saying, "I will never work in the 9-to-5 world." Mm-hmm. I just knew it. I don't have the nervous system for it. I jump out the window,
I always use that example. I always say I would jump out the window.
Right. It's just not who I am,
Yeah.
So I do not take for granted how lucky I am that I get to do what I get to do and that I've been doing it for years. And as you know, Susan, there's ups, there's downs. I've had years where I've made more money than I ever dreamed, and years where I was inches away of having my house taken away, mm-hmm. because that's just the freelance life. But when I look at it in balance, I am so blessed and so lucky and so grateful that I've had a chance to do what I do.
So I have a question about the industry itself, mm-hmm. because so much of my industry has changed. COVID changed everything in terms of how we record and how we audition. And, had to learn how to edit myself and record myself and do all of that and send in the audition. I don't go into an agency anymore to do it. I don't get directed anymore. I have to direct myself. So much changed. And not to mention AI, which is a whole separate conversation. I'm not even able to work right now because we're on strike for our video games. So the video game jobs I have, I'm not recording. I haven't been able to in a very long time. What changes have you seen have things changed for you in the way you are doing your projects?
That's I think the Kickstarter is a good example.
Okay.
I think, more and more, we live in a world where the line between creator and audience is thinner than ever. Some songwriter can go on YouTube and put their song up on YouTube, and if it clicks the right way, find a whole audience without ever having to go to a record company.
Yeah.
And so the thing that attracted me to Kickstarter was just that. Years ago, when the whole creator-owned thing started and Marvel had Epic Comics, DC had Vertigo Comics, you could do a creator-owned project and actually be paid a fair wage. Now there are many more places you can go with your creator-owned work, but if you want to make money on it, you got to hope that it really hits and you can get some money on the back end, because you're not going to get much of anything up front. So you can do all the creator-owned work you want, but don't expect to make your living doing that. Kickstarter allows you at least more of a direct opportunity to maybe be able to do that. And, with the companies, and this is something that's been going on for years, though, as they become more corporatized, as, DC is Warner Brothers and Marvel is Disney and all of that. But this started even before that. There was a period where it felt like the work was in many ways generated from the creators up. And there was a certain point where it shifted, and a lot of the things came from, this is what we want to do. Got a little bit more like TV, this is what we want to do, and this is what we want to do with these characters. What do you think? So a lot more ideas started coming from the top down. And I always think that certainly in comics, the best work is going to come when you hire good people and just set them free and let them do what they want to do. I just got a batch of books this week of a series I did way back in the 90s called Dr. Fate. Did it for 2 years.
Yes.
And this was an established DC character, and I basically was allowed to do whatever the hell I wanted. It was the same. It could have been a creator-owned book because I had that much freedom to do anything I wanted with it, completely turned it inside out, upside down, poured all my obsessions in it. It was everything from, psychological to supernatural to Eastern philosophy to toilet humor. I mean, everything, the entirety of who I am as a person went into this book. I couldn't do that now. There's still a lot of freedom, there's still a lot of freedom in comics, but especially the 80s and into the early 90s, there was so much freedom, even on the established characters. And it's just not the same. It's all a little bit more corporatized. And what I've seen in recent years since COVID is, and other people have talked about this on social media, trying to get a raise out of these companies, a page rate increase and things like that is becoming, the classic blood from a stone. It's hard.
Yes.
I never heard budget meetings in comics before, before recent years, well, we have to have a meeting and we all have to get together and decide how much it's going to go to this project and how much we can pay to this one and that one. I remember like back in the day, if I wanted to do a new project, I'd walk into the editor-in-chief's office at Marvel and say, hey, I want to do a miniseries with such and such character. They go, okay, that was the whole process.
Uh-huh.
And it's not like that. Everything is much more, has to go through committee and this and this and that. And with all that, it's still fun and I still enjoy it. And there's still a lot of freedom to play. So, but yeah, it's different. I mean, the whole entertainment business is different.
Yes.
And COVID and writer strikes and actor strikes. I had something that got optioned for a TV series. Literally, like 10 minutes before the writer strike started, we were like doing the final work. And then, then the strike was over and I'm watching how slowly it's progressing, if at all, because right now, and I talk to my manager, it's like just everything is slow right now. It's just what it is. That was like two wounds in a row to have COVID and all these strikes one on top of the other. And I think people are scared and people aren't really sure what to do or how to do it. But that's true across the board, right? And then you bring in things like AI and all this other craziness, and then dump some economic and political chaos on top of that. And I don't know if I'd want to be starting out as a freelancer right now. You know
Yeah,
what I
I
mean? Because
agree.
it's
I
it's a
agree.
very different time. I'm
Yes.
not, people ask me, well, how do I get in the door? When, for me, I got in the door at DS. I really started my career at DC, right from the start. Now, really, if you want to start saying comics, I always say the best thing to do is create your own comic book. Go and do a create your own series. Then you have a little body of work that you can then, if you want to work for Marvel or DC, and a lot of people don't even anymore,
Right.
but you have work to show and say, this is what I do. It's very hard for a writer. An artist can walk up to an editor's table and go, here's my artwork. What's a writer going to do? I give you a pitch for a cool story. You don't know if I can execute it. Even if I give you a 5-page outline, you don't know if I can execute it. So I started out really because Paul Levitz found some of my samples in the slush pile at DC, and took the time to write back to me and critique my work. And I kept sending him stuff.
Wow.
He kept sending it back to me critiqued until I finally sold him a story, I don't think that could happen that
I
way
don't think
anymore,
so. Wow. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think for every era, there's that sentiment of, God, it was good the way we had it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I think of that all the time with even voiceover. Uh, I talked to some students this morning on Cape Cod. It was a Zoom symposium, and all the questions come in. How do you get a foot in the door? How do you do it? How do you do it? And gosh, if I know. I mean, it's so different now.
Right.
I know what I did, but that was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But you of course, my sense is always, if you love it, do it. Whatever you need to do, figure out what you need to do today and do it. And
I always
try.
say, and it sounds like a cliche, follow your dreams. They may not
Yep.
lead you where you expect to go, but they'll lead you someplace good. You think like, I'm going to go and do that. And I see this goal. It's like 3 miles that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I start walking 3 miles that way. And all of a sudden, there's a river that I can't cross. So I have to go to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go to the right, I come to this town. This metaphor is going to break down any minute. And suddenly something absolutely unexpected happens there that wasn't part of the plan. It's kind of like what happened with animation. You don't know where the road is going to lead. But if you follow that love, if you follow that passion, and you have to have passion, because if you do not have passion, you will get destroyed. You have to want it more than, as you know, Susan, more than anything. Mm-hmm. My daughter grew up a theater kid, and she was in plays from the time she was like 8 or 9, and did it all through college. And then after college, decided, I don't want to do that. I don't have I respected that. I don't have the nervous system. I don't want to be waiting tables and auditioning and doing all that stuff. And I saw so many really, really, she had the intelligence to know when to stop. But I saw all these really, really talented kids. Sometimes you go to a high school play and some kid would come on the stage and start to sing. And oh my God, they could walk on a Broadway stage. They're so good.
Yes. Yep.
But that's not what it's about completely. I always say it's as much or more about personal will, mm-hmm. having really wanting it more than anything, and having a hard head and a thick skin. Because I've seen people. I'm going to go down. I'm going to live in Manhattan. I'm going to be on Broadway, and they come crawling back 30 seconds later because they can't deal with rejection. And what people don't realize, that even the most successful, they look at Susan Eisenberg. Oh my God, she's Susan Eisenberg. They don't know all the rejection you've gone through. And that even when you're at the top of your game in the world's eyes, you're still getting rejected all the time. It's just the nature of the beast. And if you can't handle that, if you can't handle having doors slammed in your face, if you don't want that more than anything, it ain't going to work. It just ain't going to work.
It's so true. And I actually remember when you were doing your comic, the Justice League comic, and we were all so giddy because we thought, oh, maybe they'll adapt this to an animated series and get the gang all back together, the band. And womp womp, it didn't happen.
Right. Right. In fact, I think we talked about that, and I reached out to somebody at Warner Brothers, and then nothing happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
never give up hope. Never give up hope, I say.
Well, and I never do. I mean, it's just not my nature. At the same time, I think I've been asking for a Justice League reunion for about, how long, James?
Oh, yeah. It's been, when did the show go off the air? But no, and especially now, as everyone has pointed out, without Kevin, it would be quite a different beast to take on. because he was such a, huge shadow cast over the whole cast, and the with him kind of launching the whole thing with Batman the Animated Series, it would be vastly different and I think harder to do without Kevin.
100%. Yeah.
At the same time, the show is so beloved, and everywhere you look, everybody's rebooting everything. That X-Men animated reboot was like a huge success, and not to mention all the live action reboots. I think it seems to me to be a no-brainer. Why not? And why not use that wonderful story that James and I wrote? Why not let me write it? And why not let Susan
it's
be
so
Wonder
funny
Woman
because
again?
James always says no-brainer, right? James, you always use that. It's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And we've never been able to figure it out. And I've asked Bruce Timm about it. And, like literally when we did Justice League versus the Fatal Five, and we were the three of us, Kevin and George and I were in that. And I said to Bruce, why not? Are you averse to it? Because if you are, then I'll stop asking for it. Because if you have no interest, and I'll stop asking. And he's like, no. I have an interest. It's just not on anyone's docket. And I said, oh, interesting. Now, how do I get it on someone's docket?
Right.
That's the boulder up the hill. So,
and those decisions sometimes have nothing to do with anything that we understand, and that's the other thing. I know as a freelancer in my little world in my head, I think, oh, this is going on or that's going on. And when you find out the answer why you didn't get that gig or why this took so long, has nothing to do with the reasons that I thought in my head. There are so many other elements going on that things don't happen. It's amazing anything ever does happen.
Get done. But I'll tell you what it's hard to let go of for me isn't me as Wonder Woman. Although, would I kill to do it again? Of course. But it's the fans, because I feel like their loyalty has to us, to the show, and to the seven of us. I don't think it was ever repaid. And that bothers me truly, because they wanted it. And I think they deserved it. It's like when Wonder Woman got a live action movie. That to me was the best gift the fans could get, because they deserved it and they'd been asking for it forever. Yeah. And so I feel like that, even if I take myself out of the equation, which I can do, believe it or not, it has always been painful to me because of the conversation I always had with the fans that they never got it.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway,
it seems like a no-brainer to me. Or even, I think we had even discussed when we were talking about it a couple of years ago, why not an audio drama? Something. Yeah. Something.
Yes. And we talked about that. We pitched it to some people. But, listen, it's not over till it's over, right, kids?
Exactly.
Speaking of being over, James,
the hour's flown by. This has been incredible. My last question to you before we wrap it up, kind of as a little button on this, I'm curious if you could pluck any one character out of the Justice League Unlimited line, and someone you've not yet written for specifically as a solo character, who would you pick and why?
Well, here's the problem with Justice League Unlimited. Every character in the world was in that show. Yeah. And like the second episode they gave me had them all in it. So it's hard. It's really hard to say. To pick one character that I haven't written.
Like a vigilante solo series with Nathan Fillion as the voice, or something with Shining Knight or Plastic Man. Wow. And I'm going to fail you completely, and because I don't have an answer to that question.
The funny thing is, between the comics and the animated stuff, I've had a chance to write virtually every character in the DC universe. Yeah. It's and again, the 10-year-old in my head is like, So I don't know. I don't know. It's not related to Justice League, but when we were doing Brave and the Bold, there was talk at the end of that there was going to be a Justice League International spinoff out of that. We had done several episodes using the JLI characters. That's something I would have loved to have seen. To pluck Beetle and Booster and those guys and do a whole series with them would have been just fantastic.
Yeah, a little Fire and Ice, a little Mr. Miracle, little Nort.
Yeah, Nort. Yeah, I never pass up a chance to stick Nort in anything.
But this is, it's fantastic. Like I said, you were immediately the first person, like when we started Limited, we have to make sure we get J.M. DeMatteis on. If people want to find out more about your Kickstarter projects, your prose novels, where would you send them to, social media and website wise?
My website, jmdmatteis.com. Social media these days, primarily Blue Sky, but I'm also on Facebook and sort of on Threads. Still trying to figure that one out. But Blue Sky seems to be emerging as a nice alternative to that other place that we don't want to talk about.
That's right. We won't mention
my website and Blue Sky and Facebook probably be the best places.
Perfect. Again, this has been such a blast for us to be able to talk about this episode. So many people have put this on their top 5 episode list for not just Justice League Unlimited, but the Justice League series as a whole, all 5 seasons. So thank you for taking the time to be on, and hopefully we can have you back for Clash.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
and I will watch it before next time. I'll remember to watch it.
And we really want you to come back because we need to talk about the Beatles at some point down the road too. So I'm just putting it out there for the next visit.
Me talk about the Beatles?
Yeah, I know. It's strange.
Nothing to say.
I know. It's a stretch, but
I'm in the middle of reading this new book, John and Paul, a love story and song that just came out like yesterday. Yeah. Check it out. If you're
all right. So to be continued with you.
Yes.
We will have more conversations down the road.
Thanks.
Thank you again for doing this. We appreciate it.
A pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
All right. Have a great day.
That was great. Wow. Like I said to him, I said to you beforehand, I've said off screen, I've talked to my neighbor about it. He's one of the people I wanted on this show. As soon as I knew we were doing Unlimited, I'm like, oh, we have to get him.
I know it's a big list because it's a big cast and it's a big group of people that were a part of this show, but he was at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And I think we should have him on like every other week, every other episode. He's so good. And I just adore him. And, we follow each other on social media. And so I'm always aware of him. And he's just the loveliest of men. And he's so passionate about what he does. And I could listen to him talk about story and character for, he's just so smart about it.
And the fact that there was a one-off script, like I'm going to send this in, no notes, we're good. I mean, wow.
And do you remember Stan Berkowitz telling us that people would say, well, I didn't hear from you. I figured you hated it. Right. He told us that story. And I bet it was talking about JM. I bet that was related to that.
Could be.
Yeah, it could be, right? I mean, to hand something in and just not hear it and crickets, that, of course, you'd think what you wrote was terrible,
Yeah, my mind always goes to the worst place. So,
well, most people.
Yeah. It's like when you text someone and they don't text you back. What did I do? Are they mad at me? What did I do?
Yeah.
Why are they mad? And then sorry, I didn't have my phone with me. Like 2 hours later. Just simple stuff. But, for the man who has everything, could apply to J.M. DeMatteis as well. Because look at all the stuff he's worked on and done, and my goodness.
Did we talk about the writer and director? Well, we know the writer.
Yes.
Did we talk about who directed this episode?
Directed by our dear friend, Dan Reba. I would have loved to have him on for this, but he's so busy doing cons and everything now. So we're going to have Dan on again, believe me, because he is a fan favorite.
He is he's our favorite. Well, he's one of our favorite. Yeah. But this was such a fun episode, and it was fun rewatching it and revisiting it because I can remember being in that ADR booth and having to pull, when she goes through a lot in this.
My goodness,
and
yes.
the oofs and the pulling herself up, and it was a lot. It was a lot. And I remember it all.
Yeah, no, it was intense. I was thinking about all the ADR. At least George didn't get electrocuted this time. He was in sensory deprivation most of the time. So even when Batman
totally
lasers him, it doesn't even register. But I want to mention the cast too, because obviously Eric Roberts is back as Mongol. We haven't seen him since War World. Dana Delaney, I kept thinking they never mention, is that Lois? But it's Loana. So it's a kind of a hybrid with the red hair, but the reporter of Lois Lane and Lana Lang, obviously. Mike Farrell, we got to hear him as Pa Kent. Josh Hutcherson as Van L. And Christopher McDonald as Jor-El. Plus, obviously, Susan Eisenberg, George Newbern, and Kevin Conroy as the Trinity. Oh my gosh. It's just such a good episode.
It warmed my heart to watch it again because I just remember so many of those scenes. And I loved that it was the Trinity because it was just very sweet seeing the three of us and that relationship. And when I yell out Bruce, when he's been taken over. And I'm like, the affection among the three of us was just it was so strong.
Yeah, I don't think
in real life, and, as these characters. So it was very touching.
I don't think any of you referred to each other as Superman, Wonder Woman, or Batman. I think you guys kept calling each other Clark, Diana, and Bruce that whole team, because it was a very intimate setting, just the three of you there for his birthday.
100%.
It was so good. So another one in the can, our second episode of Unlimited. I'm so excited to be back.
Look at us. Look at us with 2 episodes in the can.
That's right. And if people want to find out more about you, where you are, what you're doing, who you're going to visit next, what fabulous city is on your destination list for cons, all that kind of good stuff, where would you send people?
Well, I would send them to my website, SusanEisenbergVoice.com, because it's all there. And you can also email me there as well. And then I'm on Blue Sky, like JM is on Blue Sky, and I'm on Instagram. So Instagram is probably where I have a lot of Wonder Woman things. Yeah. And the website is where you can find out where I'm going to be.
Perfect.
What about you, mister? What about you?
I will be across all social medias, which I should say is Instagram, Threads, and Twitter at Geek to Me Radio, on Facebook.com/Geek to Me Radio, YouTube.com. If you head over to our YouTube channel, we've had some fantastic guests on lately that I'm just over the moon excited about. We just had Mark Rolston. We had John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, on recently. It's always fun to talk to these people. I still, much like JM, there's that little 10-year-old me going, I get to talk to these people.
I kept looking at your expression during this interview, and the fans can't see it, obviously, but I can. And you talk about the 10-year-old. I mean, really, it was, and you understood everything he was talking about, unlike me, who didn't get probably 90% of his references to characters. I'm like, okay, I have no idea who he's talking about. But you understood, and that's why I'm so glad you're my co-host.
Yes, I love being the co-host on this crazy train of a bus, boat, shipwreck, whatever. We're traveling around all the place, and Tom Hanks is not the captain, so we're not going to crash. No worries. But yes, and check out, like I said, the YouTube channel. We just broke 8,000. So keep on going there. If you haven't listened to me yet, check me out on there. We go live every Sunday night with a brand new show on YouTube and Facebook. You can check out the video as long as Joey V is there running the video. So we do new broadcasts, new guests, live show every Sunday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And if you're listening to this right now, get your tickets, because I think in one more week, Susan will be joining Carl and Phil and Maria at Two Rivers Comic Con, with I think about a week to go, if I remember correctly, my math, when this episode will drop. So come and see us in St. Louis / historic St. Charles, and get to meet the Justice League along with Dan Reba and Alan Burnett.
Can't wait. And I mean, it makes me giddy to think of all of us being together. And the fact that Dan will be there, and we can share a martini. Oh my gosh. Can't wait.
If he shares his martini, we'll see how it goes. But another one in the can. So thank you, Susan Eisenberg, for co-hosting this show with me. And thank you, all of you who listen. Thank you all to you sending questions. We did try to get to all of them. Obviously, a couple of them had already been asked, or he had addressed them. So hopefully you got the answer you were looking for.
Right, exactly. And I like how you now are using the expression "in the can." That's become, All right, so kids, another one in the can for us. Please stay tuned, because the conversation will definitely continue.